So when it comes to this, I don't have to do anything.
I'd like to call the Wednesday, September 9th Board of Public Works and Safety meeting to order. I will be pulling off my mask. We have sneeze guards, and so you can hear me. I will keep that down, protected. First, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Yocum, would you give us the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move to the approval of minutes, and I would also like to thank Jess Romine, just a thought on the passing of Gene Dolberg yesterday. What a kind man that really committed himself to the community and to the city, and for all the years that he served. Just thought we should take a moment of silence because he made a definite impact when a lot of community members didn't believe in what was happening in our community. He really did, and he drove progress, and we thank him for that. But with that, if we could just take a moment of silence. Thank you. Jess, any thoughts that you'd like to add about Gene?
He was a great guy. He came into our office often and visited with us, and he always had a smile on his face and always had a story to tell, and he really lived life, so I will definitely miss him very much.
So do I have a motion for approval of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Public comment via Facebook Live or live in studio here. Is there anybody, if you'd like to raise your hand to speak? Anybody on Facebook?
I'll keep observing, Mayor.
Okay, we will move on then from public comment. Clerk Treasurer Parthun, claims approval.
Okay, we have civil city claims in the amount of $300,194.55.
I move we approve the civil city claims.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, we have sewage claims in the amount of $460,246.10, which includes September bond transfers.
I move we approve the sewage claims.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, or discussion first?
Courtney, I was curious, on the first page, I don't know if you have the whole packet with you, but on the first page, there's $174,000, and most of those say that they're reimbursement because they were on the wrong account.
They were,
So
yes.
is that an influx, is that a debit out of this and a credit somewhere else into one of
Yes,
the
it's
other
a credit
accounts?
to the stormwater account, isn't it?
From stormwater to depreciation.
From stormwater to depreciation.
Okay, great, just wanted to make sure I understood that, thank you.
Any other questions? That's why we have a CPA on the board here.
That's right.
Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, water claims in the amount of $212,395.07, which also includes September bond transfers.
I move we approve the water claims.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, and then we've got payroll for, it says payroll for August 21st in the amount of $412,000, $563.60.
May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
September 4th payroll in the amount of $405,602.14.
I'll make a motion that we pass the payroll for September 4th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
And then police fitness bonus, August 24th, in the amount of $2,536.30.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. How many individuals is that total?
Do we know that? We can get you that
I
information.
think it's a small number, though.
More than normal.
How does the program work for the bonus?
Can you explain that?
This bonus?
It's part of-
Dana, if you could help us
Is the chief
out.
on? The chief might.
Chief Breton. He has a smile on his face, so
He's on mute.
do I need to unmute?
Yeah.
I'm not.
Is the question of how they earn the fitness bonus?
Chief, can you hear us? Can you try again now?
Okay, it's the fitness standards for the academy, exit standards is what they have to pass. Mile and a half run,
Year,
sprint,
supposed to be
push-ups,
April 1.
sit-ups, vertical
That's in the
jump.
contract.
It's conducted twice a year. They
Hey.
can attend one of them.
And Chief, do you know how many people or how many officers have participated?
It was pretty light we had to keep pushing it back. We've had 2 of them, in the recent months. I think we're gonna have another one. I don't have the
Had to
exact
be
number.
110.
It wasn't that many as of yet.
I think that's an important part to get more of those officers involved with that and participate in that, so, thank you, Chief.
So Chief Breton, that's basically for current officers, it's the academy standards, but it's current officers who are on the force that participate in that.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
And,
correct. And our biggest problem was getting a space to do it. With the COVID, so many places were shut down. But they started having it, once we got onto Kiwanis, we could run it. And that's where we ran it last time.
And I can tell you, it's part of their contract. They're able to earn $250 2 times a year, in April and October, I believe. So this would be the April portion.
So something that's,
It's good incentive.
yeah,
I like it.
absolutely. All right, thank you. So we do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Clerk Treasurer, trash service request.
We do have 2 requests to add trash service. One is for I Have This Covered LLC at 516 Lincoln Way.
Do you want to do these individually?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And then the next one is for Healthcare Foundation of LaPorte, 140 East Shore Parkway. Both would follow the ordinance standards of trash picked up.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
So-
I love the Healthcare Foundation building. Let's get that trash out there. That's a fantastic building,
Nice,
so.
yeah. Okay, so obviously, the Healthcare Foundation, new building. So with the I have this covered, that's not a new building, right? So
It's
that's
not a new building, and they're not currently being charged for trash services. So we would add that to their utility bill.
So they've not been utilizing the trash service?
No, they must have had.
Had their own
yeah.
or something? Okay, okay.
You might want to change on the service address and billing address, they're different. They're short and shore.
Oh, I did see that. We'll let utility billing know. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Clerk Treasurer, updated department payment process.
Okay, so you have in front of you LaPorte City Utilities policy that we really need to dive into and change quite a bit of things. Being that it's budget time right now, I have not had a single second to pour into this, except for the fact that due to all of the delinquent accounts and customers being shut off, it's been an overabundance of activity in the utility billing office. It has come to our attention that people with delinquent accounts that have been shut off are trying to pay to get their services reconnected with NSF checks, and that's not part of our policy. So they would have extended, in current policy, they would have extended time once they write a check that comes back to us NSF, then there's a whole process that goes along with that, 10 days, and we have to send letters. I mean, with the account being delinquent already and with all of the help that we've been able to provide so far, I just don't think that should be part of our policy. I think once we know that there's an NSF check on a delinquent account or an NSF electronic payment, that we should be able to immediately shut the water back off. So that's what I'm presenting to change currently. It's a lot of additional work for our office to go through the process when there's an NSF check written. And these are on accounts that we're already spending quite a bit of time setting them up on payment agreements, turning the water off and back on. So we don't need to be spending additional time sending out letters to then collect on an NSF fee and NSF check.
I've seen how flexible in your office has been to help these individuals. I fully support the second that they write an NSF check, that we are able to turn the water back off again, and then no longer will accept payment via check moving forward, correct?
Correct.
I would make a motion.
Second.
So we do have a motion and a second discussion.
So so these are individuals or folks that there's already a delinquent account.
Already a
They're
delinquent
already in
account.
that process of delinquency and shut-offs, potentially turn back. And then they write an NSF check.
Correct.
Which they may or may not know then just begins like a different process
Correct.
of delinquency. So
Just a cycle of, it
Right,
just
you kinda
doesn't
okay.
make sense, and it's not,
It perpetuates their
it
water
does.
staying on.
It does, and I don't know that I feel like sometimes people know these processes, so this is our opportunity to be able to really dive deep into this and just make the system work better for everyone. There's help out there, again, if people need help, there's help out there, and we're here to help. They just need to call us.
And that's the thing, the clerk treasurer's office has been more than willing to help everybody, so there's no reason to do this.
Right, yeah, so what, the exact correction you'd like to see on these policies is to just once the account's in delinquency,
I think we just changed the terminology in the language in the delinquent account area.
So it's already corrected.
It's already
or
corrected
amended
from what
on
you
here.
guys see, yes, from
Okay.
what's presented.
So then do we need to amend the motion to be just under the delinquent portion of that, or?
And
are
then
we-
you'll be seeing the rest of the policy changes in the near future, once we update all of
I mean,
those.
it is 13 years old, so it's probably time.
Well,
time.
you see a lot of
Turn it
online
on.
payment, I mean, there's just different things that they didn't have to deal with 13 years ago that the clerk treasurer has to deal with.
Correct.
So we'll amend just to the delinquent portion of the account?
Yes, that's the only thing that
That's the only, I would just, as presented to you today.
So I'd like to amend my motion to be just as
As
presented to us today.
And Courtney identified what the change was, correct?
Do I have a second on that amendment?
second.
So I have an amended motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Treasurer
Thank you.
Parthun.
There's a couple, I mean, and Courtney is correct, there's gonna be some other changes that we have to make as we kind of talk through this, and we've had a couple, businesses / individuals who have, for example, turned on water without our permission, I mean, illegally within the last couple months, and Tim Warner's shaking his head. This is something that we're gonna have to deal with very seriously, because it's theft. I mean, that is stealing city services, and so, I think, Ms. Barthune and her office are taking it very seriously, and I think, Mayor, you're kind of leading that charge as well.
Absolutely, I fully support, we had a situation yesterday where we had to get law enforcement involved because stealing our water.
How did you figure that out? That was the water department identified
With our
that?
new meters, we're able to, once we shut someone off, we wouldn't see that, we wouldn't have to go back and flag that account until new water is set. So there's a new work order put in place. I'm gonna just give you the example. I'll give you all the details and no names. So June 16th, we had a work order to shut off a location's services.
Is that due to delinquency or due to?
They moved out. They
Okay,
just
okay.
whatever, for whatever reason.
Gotcha.
So, now it's September 8th, 9th, whatever yesterday was. And we get a customer that wants to set water with a lease that shows that they moved in June 26th. The water was shut off by the water department on the 16th and noted on the account. And then we get this lease and it says June 26th, so we can go back on the account and see that there has been usage, water's been used from the, I think, 19th, I don't remember all the details, from the 19th on, and now they're coming in to set water. So, I mean, we hear it all, I can tell you, but we kind of have to play detective and go backwards. And yes, we can see usage on the smart bill, so we're able to place that usage somewhere and get the dollars back that we're owed. But nobody should have turned the water back on from the 16th is the whole point of the matter. So we
Right.
shouldn't have to backtrack and go play detective to get the money that we're owed.
Tim Werner, would you like to add anything to this, of how real of a problem this is?
Oh, it's definitely a problem, Mayor. Not only with some of the landlords, but just individuals that will go out and turn their water back on after it's been shut off. The new meters we have keep track of that fairly well. So what I've done is the recent shut-offs, I've got our meter department going back and looking at those accounts that are shut off to make sure that there's not any usage in those accounts. So if it's an individual, what we end up doing, because obviously they have a stop box wrench to turn that back on, we've been filling their boxes with sand. So we fill the box with sand. So I got to send guys out to do that. And then once they do pay their bill, we have to go remove the sand. So there's a lot of hours involved in making sure these delinquent accounts aren't stealing city services.
Well, especially when the clerk treasurer's office has been working with everybody and very flexible, so thank
I
you.
think we've been more unfair with them.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to department reports. Beth West, would you like to begin?
Good morning. The last couple weeks, we've been working on getting our new buses. We have 2 buses that we need to replace through the years and in mileage. One of the buses is actually being great with our CARES Act funding, so we're excited about that. And we're also looking at putting the new logos on all of our buses. I finished and submitted for the PMTF grant, which should bring in about $61,000 next year for our operational costs. I'm currently working on our ADA annual audit. We get audited by the ADA every year. It's very time consuming, lots of paperwork that they need to go over. We have been Medicaid certified. We have our number. So that means that we can start working with outside transit agencies to start transporting Medicaid patients, like to dialysis, where they can have Medicaid actually pay for their transportation. So we're now currently working with providers to have that accomplished. That's about it for now.
And that's I want to thank Beth for her effort on that. Having the Medicaid number will allow us where we charge $4-ish for a ride. The state reimburses $25 for rides that could be happening here. So we're really excited about that, and Beth put a lot of effort in. So, Bert Cook?
Morning, Mayor. Sorry for the delay. Just want to mention that at last night's city council meeting, the city council chose to move forward with infinite development on some new professional office space and townhomes that are starting along East Shore Court. This will be the first phase of a much larger project, which will eventually result in about 80 new residential units that will be new construction in our city, which is desperately needed. We're really excited about the project and thank the council for their support, and we'll see construction starting almost immediately out there. Thanks.
Chief Breton.
Maybe that has to do with.
Okay, quite a few things. LexisNexis, the electronic reporting is moving forward still, probably 2 weeks out on that. Body cameras, we've got the backup system ordered. Their think tank's working on that. Hopefully we'll have body cameras by the first of next week activated. Every officer will have them. We have our pension meeting tomorrow for 4 new hires. That's just a formality. We send that back down the state. It's a state requirement. We had the agility test, 5 potential officers passed. We'll be setting up interviews with them. And then we'll have promotion request here later.
Chief, thank you. And as well, though, while the body cams may have been on a grant, the backup of those are costly to the city. So, I mean, that's a real cost when we hear the governor, and we appreciate that, hey, we're going to start mandating body cams and so forth. There is a cost that the city incurs to back those up, correct?
That's correct. And we started with think tank design this. Hopefully, we aren't going to have a bunch of added costs with it, but being new, and this is our first time at it, we're going to experiment with here and see what we got. It all gets back to the cloud. It's all FBI approved. There's stipulations and all that.
And you've been focused on speeders. We get it. We are getting a lot of issues regarding speeding on Pine Lake, Indiana Avenue, Ohio. You know, we're asking people to slow down a little bit. There's a lot of families, especially over there on Ohio. You've got Heilman School, and we added a stop sign soon to come on at Lawrence because it became a drag strip. So, Chief, I think you guys have really focused on speeders over the last couple of weeks here.
Yes, and we have the speed sign. We had it for northbound traffic on Indiana over the weekend. It's now set up for southbound traffic. Officers have been watching that, and it seems to be working. In addition to the traffic stops, it does seem people are getting the message. That's not going to be tolerated.
Good. Tim Werner, anything else?
Good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to give a few updates. We're going to be sending out some well cleaning bits here soon, starting probably next week. We had our flow test done a couple weeks ago. We have a few wells that are going to need to be serviced. The other thing is we are starting fall flushing this Sunday. It'll be 3 to 4 weeks long. That will be done at night to minimize customer disruptions. We're also running new SCADA wires out at the Kankakee well field. That way we can get better information out of that well field. And we'll be continuing with the second phase of our SCADA update for the main plant and all the outlining towers starting next week also. So,
Tim, and if you want to just update the public, when you're cleaning the water or flushing the system, what that could mean for a homeowner and what they need to do.
yeah, basically, some homeowners might get some rusty water. We call it dirty water in their system. The best thing to do is to let the cold water run for 10 minutes. This should clear up. Try not to run any hot water. That way, that water doesn't make it into the water tank, hot water tank. If someone is caught doing some laundry during that, and they have some staining in their laundry, all they have to do is call the water department. We have some iron out. We'll bring out to them. It usually works to remove the staining out of the clothes.
Great. And what's the number they call?
362-9540.
Very nice. Hey, Mayor, I got a question for Mr.
Mr.
Cook.
Kosher has a
I got a
question.
question for Mr. Cook, though.
Go ahead,
Okay.
for Mr. Cook.
Yeah, so the development there on East Shore Parkway and McClung, So that, the building that's up right now, is it currently already lined up for leases for any businesses?
So the buildings that are under construction right now, the professional office, which is right across the street from the Healthcare Foundation, they just started construction on that. I believe there is a tenant in hand for that building, but nothing is announced on that yet. And then the other part of the project is townhomes. I think there's 6 units total. Those will start construction probably in early spring of next year. We're taking the projects to city council in blocks because there's so many different units being built. So we're kind of doing it a few at a time just to make a logical connection to what's being built almost immediately. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that, yes, and the one additional question, that the condos then, they'll be on that contiguous piece right there at that corner?
Yeah, there's, excuse me, there's two pieces of residential. So there will be professional office along East Shore Parkway, and then behind that, there will be, I think it's about 55 units of paired ranches. And then across McClung Road, there'll be 14 townhomes, which will be, kind of blocks of townhomes. So that's the 2 pieces of residential. I think there's 12 professional office buildings that will eventually be built there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
To follow up on that real quick, the Plan Commission approved sending the zoning change for that project to the council, because there was a zoning change required from B2 to R2B. They did that last night, so you should see that at the council meeting the next council meeting.
All right.
And Mr. Cook's been pretty bashful. There's quite a few projects that are going around the city. I drove out to Rural King this morning, and I saw Pavey excavating out there, and they're doing some work as we prepare for the pavement and many more things. So, Mr. Fraze, Street Department.
Yeah, we're gonna be cutting some trees this week, street sweeping, patching, and picking up brush.
And we're still on schedule to receive the heated oil machine that we approved, that you'll be able to fill potholes and work on streets even during the winter.
Yeah, it's still ongoing.
Great.
It's in the process. It should be here with, they said 4 to 6 weeks.
I think that's really important, because we pick up some paving there that we normally would have to shut down because we'll have our own equipment. Jeff Batchelor, Code Enforcement.
Good morning. Just want to thank everybody. We ended up the dumpster program last Friday. We ended up emptying 70 dumpsters during a little over a month period. $30,000 was given to us by the Urban Enterprise Association. We want to thank them again for the opportunity to make LaPorte better, and the citizens really stepped up and cleaned up the city, and couldn't be more proud of the progress. Still got work to do, but they took a lot of responsibility and cleaned up a lot of the town.
Hey, Jeff, do you want to add about the language that passed last evening as we continue to crack down on those individuals that don't want to follow the rules in our community and put our police at risk?
Yeah, what we did last night is there was an ordinance that was passed. It's for the chronic nuisance properties. It's once a property is determined that it is a chronic nuisance property, if there are 5 calls for a service from the police department to a location, then we can condemn that building. But they first have to be labeled as a chronic nuisance property. There was somebody that got on there and talked last night, and they got a little confused. It's for the chronic nuisance properties. That's once they're labeled, that we get the 5 calls, and I will be in contact with them. So it's just not going to be, we get the 5 calls and we want to take and close them down. After we get the phone calls and the police show up there, then I'll call them and say, hey, address your issues, because this is 1, this is 2, and so forth. And this is where they need to take accountability for their property.
But the issue is, we've labeled the current language we've labeled rental property, and the only thing that happens is the bad behavior continues, the police are continually coming out, we find them, the landlord doesn't pay, it's just an ongoing circle, and then we end up having gun, knife issues. So now it's like, hey, if you, after you're named a nuisance property 5 times within 6 months, Jeff can go condemn that apartment or condemn that home that they're living in and force the people out.
So what's the criteria or the process to get to the nuisance label?
Okay, if they have 3 code violations within 60 days, 3 police calls within 60 days, or a combination of both, after 2, then I contact them and say, hey, you have 2, the next one would make you eligible to be a chronic nuisance property. Do I try to work with people? Yes. I mean, I don't take and automatically just throw it up there and that stuff. I give them a break, but if it's a person that's got, there's been times where we've had people 4 or 5 calls in a weekend. Brendan can verify that. Or we go there and it's an apartment complex. There's numerous violations in that whole apartment complex. That they can meet the whole criteria in that one day, with different violations through that. So there's no surprises. I've talked to them before they get placed as a chronic nuisance property. And, then once they get labeled as a chronic nuisance property, they're that for a year. Then if they stay clear and don't get into problems and they clean it up and that stuff, then they can be removed as a chronic nuisance property.
And again, this is a standard we talked about coming in. There should be no surprise to the community because they're tired of it and we're tired of dealing with it. And, Chief Breton and his team have more important things to deal with out there in the public than continual issues at the same location.
What happens after 1 year if they do not straighten up?
If they do not straighten up,
Correct.
it just continues. They'll just continue to be a chronic nuisance property, and there's fines that go along with the police visits. There's fines that go along with if we go there and we find more visits, and it's just an endless battle because they're not paying their fines. They're not fixing some of the properties. I mean, so this is our next step. This is something that's got to happen so we can see progress because, there's people, I know of one chronic nuisance property that owes close to $4,000 and they haven't paid none of their fines.
But what is the end game? What's the ramifications if they continue to just be a chronic nuisance property, not pay?
Well, we'll condemn the property.
Then we can
Right.
condemn
Correct.
anytime after that first year if they don't get things cleaned up.
Correct.
Correct?
And we
Okay.
can remove them out of, and so the property, Jeff, the property is condemned only as long as the individuals are in the building or in the home. So once they're removed, that landlord could then re-rent that to someone new.
Correct.
So that's, whereas a condemnation of a home that has physical issues in the building, those have to be repaired. So just like that, the individuals, in a sense, have to be repaired. They have to be removed.
I see.
And then allow new people in.
So in these situations, do you find that, so obviously it could be a landlord not addressing code violations or any other citations that have been issued, or it could be residents, say tenants, potentially that are the problem. Are you finding, what tends to be the case? Is it typically tenants or is it typically landlords or is it a mixed bag? Is there any trend in that?
It's a combination of all of them. And another thing is too, by the police calls, because it's usually activated by somebody calling in. If it's a victim or somebody that's been a victim of a crime and they're calling in for help, we are not including those people in the phone calls to condemn that building because we're not trying to hurt people that's trying to get help. We're trying to help people that, that want to live life like they should without being put in bad situations.
But we have more of our community getting out, riding their bikes, walking, and Jefferson Avenue at night, Maple Avenue, enough. We're done dealing with this, and these landlords that want to pick up properties at $30,000, $40,000 in tax sales, not do anything in it, not care who they rent to, it's over. And I know they're not happy, but we're tired of, that's what LaPorte's being becoming, or has been, and we're done with it, so. That's why we did this and help move forward, so. All right, Jerry Jackson.
Just a comment that our treatment plant, maintenance crew has, pretty much, finished reconstructing our clarifiers. That's been a ongoing project. We've done one a year, and they finished an intermediate tank this year. They're rebuilding the mechanical portion of those. Those clarifiers, the mechanical portions were 30 years old. They've been doing one a year, doing it in-house, replacing all the chains, the flights, the sprockets, the wear channels. Save the city a lot of money, and they do really nice work. They know what they're doing. So I just wanted to shout out to them.
And then,
I got a bunch of other business for the board, but that's all I got for the moment.
and most importantly, I mean, I see the Herald Argus here, but, you know, Tim Werner, Jerry Jackson and I have been working. We are going to have to look at, we've had in our first 7 months and years before that, complaints about the infrastructure for water and sewer and stormwater. And we do not have the dollars to pay for that infrastructure, so that, for example, in the letter streets, the number streets, when you walk out of your home in some instances of rainfall, you know, you're up on the streets knee-high in water. We have to address this. Jerry, Tim, and I will be meeting with different residents, different homeowners, different business owners, to have some conversation. They want the infrastructure fixed, repaired, and the only way we can do that is updating the monthly fees. And so when you look at, we're paying, or as a resident, you're paying only $18 for water, roughly $24 for wastewater, and what people pay for NIPSCO, what people pay for cell phones, what they pay for internet, what they pay for cable, you know, to get water and sewer at those numbers is a very reasonable option. And so we do have to look at bonding and paying for those bonds. And we want to, the majority of those dollars will go into the infrastructure. We plan on a lot of work. So Tim, Jerry, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. It's not fun conversation for anybody to have, but it has to be done, and we'll be bringing that before City Council in October to begin looking at in January.
It's never fun to increase rates, but if you're not addressing these problems, you're digging yourself a bigger and bigger hole. So it is, as I said, it isn't fun, but you got to do it or you fall farther behind. And we've got issues to address, no doubt about it.
Would it be
And I think the
possible?
nice thing about it is we have some shovel-ready projects too, that the community will see immediately, this work's starting. So I'm excited about it too.
Would it be possible to get, I guess maybe like almost like a top 10 list of sort of the worst spots when it comes to, you know, sort of post-rainfall flooding issues in town?
We even have video. You can get firsthand video stepping into the streets over on the letter streets, number streets, literally walking into knee-high rain. But Jerry, I think you have that, or Tim, you have it, a good listing of what needs to be done.
I do. I've got a rather extensive list of all the drainage problems that I've accumulated over time. Some are, you know, minor, only minor from, you know, they affect just a few homeowners. Some, which if you're one of those homeowners, of course, it's not minor, but some affect you know, a whole neighborhood, like the mayor had mentioned, the letters and number streets. So the proposed project list, which I'll share with you, kind of is address some of the bigger issues and address some of the smaller issues. We can't afford to address everything, but try to hit a significant number of the problems and let the residents see an improvement.
Because right now it's $81 million to do everything.
That's to separate sewers in the city, and that's actually an old estimate, so it's more than 81 million.
Awesome.
Are any of the, so obviously with lots of development, construction going on around town, I know like, number letter streets, not necessarily there, but in other areas, are you seeing any issues that are popping up post-development and new construction? With like,
I
is
didn't
that,
quite
for example,
catch
like,
that.
so as in, like, the construction, the development resulted in additional water that was not accommodated by whatever the plan was for runoff? Is that happening, or is that not really the
I'm
case?
still having a little trouble, but a lot of the city's area was a lot of the city's sewers, about 80% were built at a time when there were combined sewers. And when it rains too hard, their capacity gets exceeded and we get flooding. So if you look at the peripheral part of the city, those areas have separated sewers, storm basins. They don't suffer that sort of flooding problems. It's the center, the older part, that where sewer capacity isn't what it needs to be to handle an intense storm. And of course, storms are getting worse, so we need to think about the long-term future.
And Jerry, what about the new projects? I think was Mark's question, the new developments. Is that creating more water issues than you prepared for or that we knew about?
The newer developments, pretty much, they tend to take care of their stormwater issues on site. Build storm basins to capture the water and then release it at a controlled rate. We look at the downstream situation to see, can we handle the stormwater? For example, the McClung Road development we've been talking about, that will have a storm basin. It will likely discharge to the McClung Road storm sewer at a reduced rate so that the downstream storm system can handle it. It's the inner part of the city that's the older part that's tough, the more expensive, tougher part to fix.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that answer. So bringing up
I'm
McClung
having a
again.
tough time hearing Mark, so I'm sorry if I'm not
Speak out
answering
here,
his
come
question
around the
directly.
side here.
Oh, he's not picked.
I don't think he's picking that up.
Oh,
You can
okay.
just shout right into him.
Okay, so one other, speaking of McClung Road, so I remember noticing a few weeks ago that there was like what appeared to be maybe a 16 to 20 inch pipe that looked like it was pumping out of, let's see, that would be Lower Lake, I think, Lower Lake.
Yeah.
And then I noticed it was gone. Was that a resident doing something? Was that, well, do you know what that was?
That was lowering the level of Fish Trap Lake.
Fish Trap.
It was a MS4 project, a cooperative party project between LaPorte County and LaPorte. The residents, we've had 4 years of above average rain, and in the spring that was flooding wells and septic systems. So what the project was to pump we took the lake down about 24 inches. It pumped through the city's storm system, so I'm saying it's cooperative, through Clear Lake, down the siphon and out of town. That was a really unusual project. We have not, in the years that I've been working for the city, that has never come up that the lake got that high fish trap. And I think it's just due to unusual rain.
Any other discussion there? Mark Schreiber.
Thank you, Mayor. Got a lot of projects going on, but did want to update on a couple of them. May have noticed a lot of residents that we are renovating tennis courts. We are doing the Bill Reed Tennis Complex out in Kessling Park. That is a renovation where we're also adding some dedicated pickleball courts, renovating a court at Rumley Park, and also constructing new in Alassie. We are also at this point going to be doing a crowdfunding on Patronicity to do the final bit of funding for that. We have a $20,000 goal. If we reach that goal, we get a $20,000 match from the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. We'll be launching that campaign this week. We expect completion of the project sometime in early October. So pretty excited to get that moving. Also, our Stone Lake improvements on Lakeshore Drive, we've seen a lot of activity in the last few weeks. And I think at this point, we're expecting to see the first course of pavement this week, and substantial completion of the entire project should be by mid-October or so. So just wanted to update on those two projects.
Great. Nick Minnick.
Did get an update yesterday, Tyler and State Street, the work that the hospital's doing in that area. They've been a little delayed. They had some asphalt they wanted to repair, so they'll be doing that hopefully today. It was supposed to happen yesterday, but weather didn't allow them. They'll be striping on Thursday, and then the goal is to have that open no later than Friday morning. So I know it's been longer than expected, but that all should be open no later than Friday morning. Stone Lake is the last street to be paved in our first round of paving. That contract was with Walsh and Kelly. And our second round is starting with concrete work. Reith Riley is currently working on sidewalks and ramps in the paving areas. And then our department's we're pretty busy working on our federal aid projects for next year. We don't know what'll happen with community crossings, but we know that we'll have some paving in the spring because we also have some federal dollars earmarked for next spring. So we'll continue to keep paving streets, even if we don't necessarily see community crossings being the same program in the coming year.
And we monitor the specifications that are required for the asphalt and so forth, and we're making sure they're meeting that.
Yes.
Perfect.
Quick question, Mr. Minnick, on so paving. Do you know offhand where, let's see, like Truesdale and over running through Fox Park, like where that lands on the list? I mean, that is, quite honestly, I think it's one of the worst roads. I kind of go on, and it's a connector to a lot of like these projects that we've got. It's a connector to Fox Park, to the amphitheater, to all that. Where does that land on the priority list?
Yeah, Truesdale's a little bit complicated because the more opportunities for funding, the more complicated a project gets. So we submitted several NOFAs, I think 2 NOFAs ago, which is a notice of federal funding availability through NERC. So we submitted for a project to use federal dollars to reconstruct Truesdale. The project was accepted, not funded. So they're opening up another NOFA on Friday, and we could potentially get funding through that. But we also look at what is that road going to be, and what should we do with it? So we start looking at other funding sources and other potential ways to fund the project. So there'll be most likely a trail portion of that to complete the loop trail around Clear Lake. It's in a redevelopment area, so redevelopment commission funding. The UEA has been supportive of infrastructure projects in the past. There's a number of different ways we can do it. If we can use the federal money on other projects that aren't necessarily in a redevelopment area or aren't in the urban enterprise zone or other things like that, then we'd like to do that. So we have the project kind of on the drawing board, kind of somewhat ready to move forward, but it's figuring out exactly when the right timing and the right funding is going to make that project really successful.
The UEA has been supportive of a lot of different things over the last 7 months.
Yeah.
But Nick, you're also straightening out the road, correct?
Yeah, part of the Truesdale project, it has a really strange angle in the road, and that's really associated with where the railway used to go through. Since that doesn't exist, we're looking at kind of correcting that geometry, and then obviously we're repairing through the park and trying to upgrade that to be a more attractive park road.
But we see like within 2 years or less for Truesdale?
That's, yeah, the goal would be within 2 years.
Haley, anything you'd like to add? No? Okay, Andy Snyder?
Good morning, Mayor. Just to let the board know, we did move into the new fire station about a week and a half ago now, and things went very smoothly. Things have been running well out of there, and we are hopeful to have a ribbon cutting end of next week or sometime the following week. So just stay tuned. We'll get the word out. That was a little glitch with our planned date for next week, so that may change. The old station is been, Dick Pavey has been working on getting that prep for demo. I believe as soon as the utilities are disconnected to the building, he will start demo of the building. He's looking forward to get that done and over with. And a little note, we will not be having our annual firehouse open house this year that we normally do to kick off Fire Prevention Week, but we have partnered up with the LOK Wishing Tree Foundation, and we will be doing a drive-through CO detector distribution. So there'll be more details coming forward about that too, and the press will send out some press releases for that.
Great, and Tom Casey, I think will come up here.
Thank you, Mayor. Briefly, we've got branding continuing going on with Jess Bruder. That's moving fast and forward. Grace Roman has been very busy working on a GIS mapping system, which we're going to be able to use in various applications. Right now, it's basically going to detail all of our infrastructure within the city limits. We're going to look at large acreage, land sites in larger than 10 acres in size, and map those and look at potential acquisition, annexation spots. We're also going to be able to use it, basically you can put a query in for anything. Grace is able to do this, and once the map's created, we can use it in various ways. So that's underway. We are amending the zoning ordinance right now that includes both signage, billboards, and permitted uses in different areas. Mary Ann Richards has done a great job in getting the Tidma Bakery building down. We're meeting with Nick Minnick to complete a site plan so that we can go to potential developers and tell them what we want to see there and interview them. We're also considering a third party for a housing demand study for the city of LaPorte. That's ongoing, and that's it for my department.
And housing is the key component. We have zero availability of housing of all types, from affordable to higher end, and that is one of Tom's focus. We have to create it. We have to be aggressive. It may be outside the city limits when we look at housing, and we have stopped providing water and sewer to areas that do not want to be annexed first, and I think we have to relook at that, where we're supplying water and sewer currently, and do what's best for our residents while we look to grow and expand. And we want to be 30,000 people by 2030, and Tom's going to make it happen. The GIS mapping will be done this week.
Should be done this week. So we're working on it right now. And again, once we get all that in the map, we're able to use that map for anything. We can do a search for land sites zoned residential, 2 acres or larger, within the city limits, outside the city limits, within 2 miles of the city limits. You can really just take that tool and do quite a few applications with it. So it's going to be very important going forward. Even with the potential housing demand study, we can apply that to the GIS map.
Could you acknowledge our board members for wearing your branding?
Yeah, the t-shirts look great. They really turned out great. Thanks to Jess Bruder.
Gorgeous.
And then who did all that. So they look great. So
Yeah, awesome branding, yeah.
It is.
Thank you.
Everybody in my office already wants to know how they can buy them or purchase them or get a hold of one.
We should get them online then, have a little
Please.
little cart there, so.
Yeah.
All right, thanks again for everything.
Any other questions for Mr. Casey? Great. Well, I think that takes care of department heads. I know it was extended, but good information that came out of it. Let's move to new business. Request for use farmers market. I believe Angela Rose is here.
I can take this off, right? Good morning. Good morning, Jess. Mark.
Morning.
So this application that I've put before you guys is for the farmers market. As you know, Sunflower Fair was canceled this year. So with that, we've had an increase of demand to participate in our farmers market. So we're looking to expand just for the one day, September 19th, over into the plaza possibly. Just to kind of make a nice extended market and have a couple different artists and vendors available. We've had tremendous success this year. A lot of our vendors have said that this is their best year since they've been with the market for 4 or 5 years. So we want to continue to grow that and just give people an opportunity to enjoy downtown and our lovely amenities.
So may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second discussion.
Do you think that we'll look to expanding for next year into both spots? And then is this the last date of farmers market, September 19th?
No, this is the date that we typically would have had over at the Sunflower Fair. Our last date for the farmers market this year is October 10th. And that will also be the downtown trick or treat day that we have for our businesses, just to showcase them and they can show their community support.
Nice.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. And for those of you, again, department heads that don't need to stick around, go have a great day.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, by the way, just a note before Mr. Schreiber leaves, I had talked to him about some of the geese and the things that they leave behind, you know, in some of the trails and parks. And he had mentioned that, you know, one of the strategies is to let the grasses grow a little taller because they don't like going through the tall grasses. So I've just noticed over the last couple weeks, some of the grasses near like Clear Lake, Pine Lake, certainly getting longer, and there's fewer, there's less geese evidence, less goose evidence
Good work,
around the
Mr.
lake.
Schreiber.
So
I
yeah,
know
nice
he's
work on that.
focused
I
on
like
that.
it. Yeah.
Paul Breton, Chief Breton, request permission to promote.
When I read the last two retirement letters, one being Corporal Reed and the other being Captain Behenna, I didn't ask for promotions. That was my bad. We're ready now to promote for the captain of Dennis Behenna. And with that will come a promotion to sergeant and also a promotion to corporal, along with the corporal vacancy by Dan Reed. Unfortunately, I have nobody to promote to corporal right now, but we have promotion school next month and the testing will be November 2nd. Once that's done, I will promote 2 corporals with your authorization, but I would like to go forward with the captain and a sergeant promotion today, which I'm ready to move on. The numbers have been done.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Beth West, Bus Security System.
You should have received information for proposals for a camera security system for the bus garage, along with out front of transport, along with new radios and a GPS system for the buses. All of this is actually going to be paid with our CARES Act money that we received from the CARES grant. We're just bringing it to your attention due to the dollar amount that they are. They obviously are very high because of the technology that's being installed. My concern is that if you've never been to transport where our buses are parked in the evening and during the day, our dispatcher can't see into the garage. So if something would happen to one of our drivers, they wouldn't know it until they didn't actually show up inside the building. So I'd like to have another set of eyes in the bus garage for our drivers' safety. Our radios in the buses are highly important. They keep track, our dispatchers keep track of our drivers. That way the drivers are actually able to call for help when needed. They are older than they probably should be. We're having a lot of issues. We're trying to figure out if it's weather or if it's due to their age, but we feel it's time to replace them. GPS system, we actually had one that was similar. It was only being used in dispatch for our dispatchers to keep track of the buses when they're out on route, but it would be nice to have them inside the buses for the drivers to keep track of each other and to figure out faster ways to get from point A to point B. Are there any questions with what was presented to you?
Do we need a motion? So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion? Any questions?
Beth, just so I understand, we're getting new radios, like 11 or so new radios, new security cameras, and then also tablets. And then is all of this covered under like the 5-year maintenance contract in that price?
Yes.
Okay.
So what's with the with all the devices? So that my question was really on the tablets. What are the tablets going to be used for?
The GPS system.
Okay.
Is the total price for this, for everything, around 90,000?
Yes.
Okay.
And all, you said all covered by CARES Act funding?
Correct. We received almost $730,000 in our CARES Act funding. So that's going to cover that along with the new bus that I talked about earlier, actually like a bus and a half, really. It also is reimbursing a lot of our PPE that we have purchased because we're still providing masks on our buses. Lost fares, since we were doing free fares from the middle of March until the beginning of July. Salaries, we had a lot of employees that were off when there was a stay-at-home order in. So it's covered quite a bit, just that small amount of money.
And again, with what we're looking to do, we need to generate more revenue. We need to increase the bus presence in our community. And so this is, you have to have these items to look the part, to be professional, to make people feel safe.
When we get the new bus and a half, 2 buses, will we sell the other buses, or we're just adding 2 new buses to the fleet?
No, we actually lease our buses through NERC. They will then be taken back by NERC and sold. So we will continue, we just rotate them out. Basically, we continuously have 7 buses in our fleet at this time.
All on lease?
Yes.
NERC's been a great partner. They represent basically the federal government. And they've been very good to us for the transportation service.
Will it be more the front half of the bus or like the back half or like the side half?
We also have federal dollars that are sitting in a grant that's going to pay for another bus and a half. So technically in the next couple of years, we'll have 3 new buses running.
Nice.
But so if these are on an annual lease basis, does that mean that the CARES Act is supporting the cost of the lease annually, like for 1 year period, what the money that we're getting from the CARES Act?
The CARES Act is actually purchasing, it gets complicated. We're actually purchasing, we're having the bus manufactured to our specifications. So we have to pay for that. The CARES Act is allowing us, normally it's an 80-20 split when we do our federal grants. And the CARES Act is actually allowing us to do 100% purchase of the vehicle.
So in essence, the city doesn't purchase the buses, NERC does, and then we lease them from NERC on an annual basis. $1 per bus is what we pay them
Annually?
annually.
Is that indefinite or is that for the?
Beth can
certain-
probably give you better answers to that. I know that they retire them when they reach so many miles or something.
Or so many years, I thought.
Yeah, years, I don't
I
know.
thought
Maybe
7
100.
years.
100,000, I think it's 100,000 miles or 4 years.
Yeah.
Whatever comes first.
So I guess, and I don't know, maybe this is where you're going with this, Jessica. But it's like, so at what point does the city of LaPorte start to pick up the cost?
You got it. It sounds like we don't. In other words, the CARES Act will pay for the manufacture of a bus and a half, and then we will give that bus to NERC, which we will then lease back for $1 a year.
Right.
Correct?
But normally, if it wasn't for the CARES Act, our portion would have been what, about 20% then? For the new
Yes.
bus?
20%.
So that's pretty great. Do we have that CARES Act money in hand, or we get reimbursed after the fact?
We're reimbursed. It's,
No,
well, there's
no.
some that we have been,
No, we got their money. We got Transit's money.
Oh,
729,000. Oh,
Remember?
no, I don't remember. I knew we got a portion of it. I knew we got the
I think
reimbursement
we
for
got the whole thing.
PPE and.
Beth, we've got the entire funds, correct?
The funds are sitting at NERC. We have received
we
a
received-
little over 178,000 for our operational costs. That's the reimbursement of like salaries and fares. The portion of it, the capital portion of it, where it's actually physical items, NERC is holding on to. I'm working with their financial people to make our purchases. And they're the ones that are actually going to then be paying the bills and it's all paperwork, basically, so it takes a little bit longer. And NERC actually is not working in their offices right now, so it's taken even a little bit longer to get things established, but that's the process right now.
And the city commits in their budget over $200,000 to help fund transport each year, and Beth especially is leading the charge, so we can reduce that commitment. We need to increase, again, our presence of this bus service and provide as much service, and that's why we applied for the Medicaid dollars to begin generating those type of revenues, because we do not want to continue to be putting $200,000 from the city's funds into this program. We'd love at someday to have it self-sustained. Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Jerry Jackson, basement grant applications. Jerry, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm looking down at my notes.
There you go.
The first is for 1208 I Street. They got a bid to do the work for $4,325. The city would spend $1,500 of that. And the second is at 1318 Second Street. Again, they're having basement backups. I would recommend that the Board of Works approve both of those grant applications.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And Jerry, that's just a reminder to everybody, this doesn't solve our infrastructure problems by fixing what's going on in the basement.
No, all we're doing there is an important function. We're stopping basement backups, which is, a disaster for a homeowner, but it doesn't stop the surface flooding. It doesn't stop the overload to the treatment plant.
Lakeside Sewer Relocate Bid Award.
We received bids for our Lakeside sewer relocation. That's the project to relocate the sewer that's currently under Pine Lake on the shore. The engineer for the project, Haley Skalka, I think she is. I see her on. She did a bid review, and I'd ask her to go through her bid review and present it to the Board of Works.
Hello, everyone. So on August 21st, we received 2 bids for the Lakeside Sewer Relocation Project. This project consists of 3 phases. Phase 1 includes taking an existing sanitary sewer and taking it out of service and removing 4 manholes from Pine Lake. All the residents that are currently served on this sewer will be connected to a new low-pressure sewer. This phase also includes low-pressure sewer installation along Craven Drive. Phase 2 is the installation of low-pressure sewer on Closser Avenue and Waverly Road. This takes residents off of existing septic systems. And phase 3 is the installation of low-pressure sewer on Roberts Street. The total bid that we received from H&G Underground Utilities was $1,638,267.50. The total bid that we received from Selge Construction was for $1,632,832.90. After RQAW reviewed all the documents that were submitted with the bid packages for both contractors, as per LaPorte's ordinance, we recommend Selge Construction to be awarded for the project as the apparent low and responsive bidder.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion, and I had some concerns that the apprenticeship information by Selge was not provided. I've asked Nick Otis to really dig into that. I mean, there's a other side of it that, anytime we can keep it local as well, we certainly want to do that, especially during this time. But we had concern that the apprenticeship information wasn't provided, but Nick Otis had really did a lot of in-depth work, and Nick, I think you found that they did meet the requirement.
Sure. So there was, as Ms. Skalka had indicated, there were two bidders, obviously very competitive bids on a $1.6 million project that'd be within $6,000 of each other, which is after the bidding, which is pretty common. We received a records request for all of the bids, and the Indiana, Illinois, Iowa Foundation for Fair Contracting, which is a nonprofit organization, labor management organization, reached out to us because they felt that Selges was not a complete or I guess a responsive bid because they didn't provide all of their background training pursuant to our responsible bidder ordinance. And just as a bit of background, the city council and the mayor really pushed for the responsible bidding ordinance, right when you came into office, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
And so now all projects over $150,000, the bidders have to comply with that. So, and I don't know who it was at the city, but somebody did follow up with Selge, and they did provide a registered apprenticeship standards program, two of them. And I spent a lot of time yesterday and the last couple days figuring out whether they had complied with Indiana's bidding requirements and then our bidding requirements. And I believe that they have, even though they didn't submit that with their bid, because our responsible bidding ordinance does provide the city reserves the right to request supplemental information from the bidder. If this would have been a change in their bid financially, I think we'd be in a different position, but this didn't substantively change their bid other than providing this training that they're required to have. And so I think if we didn't go with Selge here, I think they would probably legitimately have a complaint that they could lodge against us on that. So I do believe they're also the most responsive as well. And I did speak with Ms. Kunstock, who's here today. I do think both bidders were a little confused about some of the language in the responsible bidding ordinance, and it may make sense to maybe bring that back to the council with some cleaner language in the future, so.
And does that include saying you have to provide all this information at the time of bid versus?
Well, you could, I mean, if the council wants to, we could change that and take, I mean, that's the,
But that's one of the confusing parts, correct?
well, I think there was some other, and Ms. Kunz, if you want to speak on this, there was a couple items that were confusing, is that correct to the bidders?
Marcy, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to step up to the podium, or?
Well, I think, Mayor and members, that there was just, on the bidder affidavit form, there was some local language on there that, needs to be addressed. And then, of course, whatever you guys decide going forward. But yes, it was a little confusing for the bidders.
Okay, I think we all want to see local businesses, we have two competing things, trying to get business, keep our business local, but we also have to comply with these state statutes about lowest and most responsive bidder, and there's even case law that's, I think, supportive of the position that I think this is a minor, I guess what the cases would say, a minor variance, not a material variance. They didn't gain a competitive advantage because of this, based off of looking at this. So I do believe Selges is the lowest bid here, so.
So I do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
May I interrupt here? I'd request that the board first I want to say that both contractors are excellent contractors. The city got two really good bids from two really good contractors, so the city was blessed there. We've got funding sitting in our accounts to do phase 1 of the project. Phase 2 and 3, I think we can fund. I'm still working on exactly where that is going to come out of which account, and potentially maybe in the future bond issues. So I would ask the Board of Works to award the first phase, and we'll do and I'll come back and ask the board to then give the notice to proceed for the second and third phase at a later date.
So then we need to adjust our,
Correct.
Well, so given that, Jerry, then, so when you say the first, you mentioned, we've got Closser and I think Roberts, I think I missed another street in there. So when you say phase 1, will it be one of those components, or will it be a certain amount of work at each of those, or how does that break down into the the 3 different phases?
The phase 1 work is the work right along the lake shore that takes the sewer under the lake out of service. I'm hopeful that I can come back to the board before Selge gets mobilized and gets doing the work and says, hey, and I asked the board, hey, please award the 2nd and 3rd phases so that all the work is done while they're in town in a smooth fashion. I'm pretty confident that can happen, but I don't want to take a step that I can't back up on.
Does that mean we're awarding the bid for a lesser amount then, or that's within the projected bid, phase 1, 2, and 3?
So Jerry,
Well-
you're not changing the bid, correct?
Just awarding 1 phase at this moment, and then it was bid in that fashion in 3 separate phases. This would just award the first phase now, the other 2 phases at a later date. And maybe Nick can tell me, maybe I'm not using the right language. Maybe it's award the bid and then notice to proceed for the later phases at a later date.
Okay.
I would suggest you accept the bids and award the first phase and hold the additional phases until such time that you can award. We do have in the contract documents a provision to hold bids for a certain amount of time.
So we will, who made the motion?
We have that, Dana, who made the motion?
Darn it, I always make
Mr.
these have
Romine?
to be amended.
So if you could amend the motion,
I thought it was you, yeah, it's you, right?
So just to be clear, am I amending the motion to approve phase 1 and
Approve the entire
hold?
contract and then just to
Hold.
proceed with phase 1.
Okay, so I'll amend the motion to accept the entire contract, proceed with phase 1, and hold on phases 2 and 3.
do I have a second?
Second.
So I do have an amended motion and a second. Discussion?
Just real quick, Jerry, when do you think you can come back to the Board of Works on this? I don't know if you can hear me.
I'm hoping at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, and then now just to get back to the Selge versus H&G. So even given, so obviously Selge was low and determined to be a responsive bidder based upon kind of what you've reviewed. And knowing full well, right, that H&G is the local, right? But still at this point, based upon kind of what you're saying with regards to statute, like we really need to go with the Selge.
Correct. Yeah, I think that even though they didn't include, we have within our responsible bid ordinance, we can request additional supplemental information. And again, Selge didn't obtain an advantage based, they had already done this apprenticeship program. It wasn't like they rushed it after the fact. It was already done. They just didn't.
Okay.
So, had they gained some sort of financial advantage, that didn't happen here. So, but if they would have gained an advantage, I think I could have come to you and said, I don't think it's responsive. But this predates the bidding. I mean, they clearly have an apprenticeship program. They just didn't submit it with. So I think we have to go with the lowest and most responsive here.
And that's why I asked
Yeah.
Nick Otis to check, because we thought there was an opportunity with H&G to do this based on their information, but based how our RBO is.
Right, well, and no offense to Selge or any other contractors, right? I mean, we'd ideally prefer to go with local if we can. So, and then you mentioned that, of course, the language in the, not the statute, but.
Ordinance.
Yeah, in our ordinance is not as clear as it could be. So it sounds like both bidders saw that there was some
Yeah,
confusion in the language,
on a
right?
different bidding issue than what we're dealing with here, but correct, right.
Okay.
Which.
And this is, Mr. Kosher, this is new to everybody here, to Nick Minnick and Jerry, who deal with this frankly more than I do. The RBO is new to everybody, but we don't want to get in a situation, I mean, I don't want the city to get sued by Selge if we went with H&G, and I think we could in this instance, so.
Yeah, understood. Okay, no, so I mean, I think, because that's the issue, right, is like even, so if there's something in the language that creates some confusion for potential bidders, even though we might like to, the intent of what we'd like to accomplish, we'd like to follow that, But given the way it's written right now and the way it's all set up, I mean, we really do have to then follow through. So I just want to make sure we're very clear that that's the case. So thank you for going through all that multiple times, really.
And I don't think there was one of the three of us that didn't want to see that happen, but with this legally, we're following Mr. Otis's recommendation. So I do have a motion, I do have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Then Jerry, General Services Agreement with Commonwealth Engineering.
Thanks for that decision on the Lakeside Project Board. I know those are really tough decisions. On Commonwealth Engineering, this is a general engineering contract. It would allow the city to do small, under $5,000 little projects with Commonwealth. We've done a similar thing with Nice Engineering. If there's a very small little engineering project with sewer or storm sewer, or perhaps assistance with review of a subdivision plan, or a technical problem I'm having operating the treatment plant, it allows an engineering firm like that to be a resource for me. I can call, ask questions. They've got some forms to start a project to formalize a small project under $5,000. I've done this for years and years with Nice, and in recent years we've started doing some work with Commonwealth, particularly with stormwater, and I'd like to be able to do the same thing. The forms that Commonwealth uses, I anticipate that the board would improve those small projects. So it's not Jerry just going out and doing it. It would still go in front of the board, but there would be you wouldn't have to go through the formal project of asking for proposals from various engineering firms and reviewing them and awarding for just little tiny projects. So that's the intent, and we've had good success with this, and it allows me to do my job in a better fashion.
And Jerry, this firm, or I guess first, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Using this firm out east, or they don't have local representation, correct?
They're in Crown Point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they did the preliminary engineering work, really the first project of any size I've done with them. They did the preliminary engineering work for the letters and numbers, stormwater, storm sewer separation for that neighborhood. I thought they did a fine job. They kind of demonstrated to me at that project what they could do.
Other discussion?
Is there a time frame on this, or this is just an agreement with Commonwealth that you will go to them for smaller projects if you choose to?
Good question. You could put a duration to that project or that general services contract. So I need to bring it up in front of the board, in a year, 2 years. That would be entirely reasonable. I believe I need to bring Nice's general services contract in front of the board. That one's got some years on it. It'd probably be worthy to bring it in front of the board.
I did review this contract, no issues with it, and of course, it's not triggered unless Jerry or, somebody reaches out to Commonwealth for service. It doesn't require us or bind us to only use them, for example.
Yeah, and for example, they've been doing nice stormwater work for me, and I appreciate the work they've done. We've done an awful lot of treatment plant work with Nice, and they're very familiar with our process and everything, and I know that they've done a lot of water work. So there would be a pick and choose, which firm you use is appropriate for what job. That kind of idea would still happen.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you very much.
Mary Ann Richards, award of the CDBG 2020 Public Service Agreements.
Good morning. Last week I emailed you 4 contracts, proposed contracts. This is for regular CDBG funds starting October 1st of 2020 through September 30th of 2021. And there are 4 contracts to be awarded, Catholic Charities, Dunebrook, Swanson Center, and Youth Service Bureau. These are all organizations that we've contracted with in the past. Catholic Charities is proposing to provide financial assistance for homeless prevention to residents of the city of LaPorte that are low to moderate income. Dunebrook is doing in-home case management with families within the city of LaPorte that are low to moderate income who are at risk of abuse or neglect. Swanson Center is doing homeless case management within the city of LaPorte. And the Youth Service Bureau is doing their mentoring program at 3 elementary schools within the city of LaPorte, Riley, Haleman, and Lincoln.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Otis, just with my role in the school board, do I need to abstain of this due to the charitable work through the Youth Service Bureau at the schools?
You could maybe pull that one out and then vote on the rest of it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So could we amend your motion to, and if you could just clarify the 3 that,
Catholic Charities, Dunebrook, and Swanson Center.
and I will second that amended motion. Before we vote on this, what is the total dollar again between these 4 charities?
Catholic Charities is getting $10,000. Dunebrook is getting $15,000. Swanson Center is getting $18,354. And Youth Service Bureau is getting $4,500.
Excuse me.
God bless you.
So my question is, have to give these dollars to, is CDBG require us, our HUD funds require us to, it seems odd that we're receiving grant money in a sense, and we're turning around giving it to same facilities, and we could actually use these dollars within our city, and these are all great community organizations, but do we have to do that?
Yes and no. There is some flexibility within the HUD guidelines. These are grants that were proposed in the annual action plan that went out for public meetings and public comments this past summer. And the action plan was approved by HUD. There were no negative comments. I propose the budget for the CDBG program in June of every year. There is a cap. We can only spend up to 15% of our funding on public services, and there are caps on other services. So depending on what the city wanted to use the money for, there are caps that have to be met. Also, there are 3 national objectives. One of them is to benefit low to moderate income residents here in the city of LaPorte. The other one is the elimination of slum and blight, and then the third one is to meet an urgent need. A current example of urgent need is the pandemic. These funds do not address the pandemic. We've already gotten our money through the CARES Act.
So this, here's my kind of concern about this. This is roughly, 50,000 that, we might be able to buy a property or an area and contract with someone to develop it. This is only for me speaking, that we can talk for future as we deal with the blight, deal with the housing, if these dollars could be used. I'd certainly like to see something like that, but the $18,354 for Swanson Center, the homeless portion, which we hear a lot about, how do we track that they're making a difference with those dollars that we're giving?
They provide monthly reports.
Because we hear Center Township doing things for homeless. Do we know what Swanson Center is doing for homeless?
Swanson Center is a referral process for Center Township. Scipio Township, Pleasant Township, and Kankakee Township. They're also a referral process for Catholic Charities for homeless individuals. They link homeless individuals in the community. They're the ones that are out on the street. Their case managers are out on the streets or in the woods, shaking the trees, looking for homeless individuals and interceding with them to try to find them housing and get them off the streets, find them a home. Also, Swanson Center is the only organization in the county that provides case management services for homeless individuals. So if you encounter a homeless individual, Swanson Center would be your first phone call to try to get them linked with case management in order to get them off the streets and get them stable housing.
And is that, you say that's data we could receive? You're receiving it, we could get copies, I don't know if you'd be interested in. I'm really intrigued with the homeless portion because there's different organizations that seem to be doing versus what happens if we all come together.
No other organization is doing what Swanson Center is doing.
Is that what they're doing currently, or is that
Yes.
what they're planning to do? Okay.
But we would get, you're saying you receive updates from them, so we could get. that might- that
I can
might-
get you
I might-
quarterly reports.
That would be great.
I agree. I mean, I think that's the same thing as like, no matter where, whatever the organization is, whether it's, whether it's this board or any other, it's, so when there's funding provided for charitable work, let's call it that, then that there still needs to be kind of the accountability piece of like, let's know what it's doing so that we know that it's going to the purpose and it's effective in achieving some outcome. So, and that can vary, right? It depends. I mean, you can't always measure it perfectly, but I would like to see that, yeah, that those monies are going and funding an outcome, an activity, or something that we can kind of get some idea of, just to, not that we think they're not doing it, but just to know. I mean, I think it's part of, fiduciary responsibility.
Great, so you'll provide that to the three of us? or we
I'll do
can
it on a quarterly basis.
The last one. All right, so any other questions? We do have a motion and a second for Catholic Charities Dunebrook and Swanson Center. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. And then if we could have one more motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the CDBG program funds to Youth Service Bureau for $4,500.
So we do have a motion, and I'll second that. So we do have a motion for Youth Service Bureau. Any questions, discussion there?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to abstain, but just to your question earlier about the last motion, so you're more interested in whether or not, like, going forward, looking at, the budgeting maybe for next year, whether or not, seeing the outcomes, deciding whether or not this is good spend of these funds versus other spend.
And again, these are great, and I'm not questioning Mary Ann's, but if we look at these funding dollars and who knows what else we've had groups say, hey, we might be interested in funding, and all of a sudden, if you could acquire a city block that is blighted or in need and combined and have housing, I mean.
CDBG, just keep in mind, CDBG can be used for acquisition and clearance. It cannot be used for new construction.
And that's where we would get an outside firm or somebody else to come in if we can provide a city block, for example, correct? And we could build housing or something of that nature. And again, I want to reiterate, I get these firms and they do well, but if we maximize the dollars versus splitting it out, could we make a bigger impact?
Also, make sure whatever you're proposing has to meet the goals that are listed in the 5-year consolidated plan. And that was done 2019 to 2023.
The housing plan?
The consolidated plan, which looks at all of the programs, all of the needs. There's a needs assessment in there. If you want to change the consolidated plan, then there's a substantial amendment process that we have to go through.
Would housing, that
Housing's already in there, but it depends on what specifically you're looking to do.
Okay. And do you have a copy of the plan, Board of Works members? Maybe that's another thing. Could we get a copy
Okay,
of that?
it's a rather thick book. I will send you a link in Google Drive, okay?
Great, thank you, Mary Ann.
Thank you. So we do have, and here's another example, and again, Youth Service Bureau, they do great work, but there's then the Slicer Mentoring Program for middle school and high school. Are they coordinating together, or are they each doing their own thing? I don't know.
I think it's a valuable concern to make sure that we take the greatest good of our resources for the greatest good of our community, right? So I understand what you're saying, and I agree that that's something to try to look more closely at.
So with that, we do have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One. Abstention. Motion passes 2-0. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Thanks.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Ann.
Tom Casey, execute final plat for Thomas Rose Industrial Park.
Thanks, Mayor. This is a final plat for the Thomas Rose expansion of the industrial park. It's roughly a 90-acre parcel in which the city, combined with the old developer, has improved. It's already been executed by the Plan Commission, so we're just looking for the Board of Works signature on this. Basically, what you're doing is agreeing to the final plat, which carves out a 22-acre parcel for a potential developer, a developer to come in and build a potential spec building. That hasn't been fully executed yet or agreed to yet, but it is part of what the developer is doing. So carving out the 22 acres so he can sell it to this developer. The other part of the other component of by executing this, the road improvements will be taken over by the city of LaPorte. So the right-of-way itself, the road is already complete, all the improvements are done to our specifications, and the property has been inspected. So it's pretty much final except for the signature by the Board of Works.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second discussion. And I think this is so important because like a home residentially, if we don't have something to show for a business to move in, it's kind of difficult. So any other discussion?
Thank you.
Hearing none, all in favor, don't I have to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
All-
got a motion and a
Oh,
second.
I have a
yeah.
motion and a second, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. He just was feeling pretty confident, Mr. Casey
He
was
really
feeling
was.
confident in the vote that he was walking away early. Mark Schreiber, position, description, admin assistant.
That's a walk-off
Yes, we're
presentation.
seeking approval this morning for a amended job description for the administrative assistant at the Civic Auditorium. This basically expands the job description to create a shared position with the fire department. These have been ongoing conversations, always looking at efficiencies, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. Started looking at this earlier in the year. We had a couple issues with how the position was funded, but we've been able to work that out. And we would like to, again, create this position that is shared, the administrative assistant between the Civic Auditorium and the fire department.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second discussion.
Does this mean that this will be one full-time position split equally between civic and fire, or it will be whatever's needed that week?
Correct. It is just the same singular position. This position will share time between the Civic Auditorium and the fire department. Kind of working that out between Brett Benversi and Andy Snyder right now. Some weeks 2 days at the Civic, 3 days at fire. Maybe the next week would be reversed. But it really will be taking a lot of workload off of Andy Snyder at the fire department. We'll be moving some of the Civic Auditorium duties over to the park administrative staff. Some will also go into the Civic director. So just trying to make best use of our employees and their time and do it in a most efficient manner.
And this is something we've done for streets along with the police department. kind of blending and job sharing, which I think is important. And I appreciate Mark Schreiber and Andy Snyder. Andy is, I think, the only department head that does payroll, does claims, and actually might even take some notes at the fire merit meetings, but he shouldn't have to do that. He's got more important things to do, and we just see an opportunity here to job share again.
So is this driven primarily, so obviously talking about workload with Chief Snyder, but also that as assistant at the Civic, that the workload's not quite there, that this is, kind of moving that, that individual, because it's someone who's already employed correctly, right? Or employed currently, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and to answer your question, yes, I mean, obviously, some of this is spurred by COVID-19, the number of events at the Civic Auditorium being down, meaning, if there's not as many bookings, not as much to do there. Just looking for efficiencies, but we do see this definitely extending into 2021 and potentially beyond. Obviously, we'll take a look and make sure the needs of both the Civic and the fire department are being met, but we think the shared position is something that could work going forward as well.
So even given, let's say, things change in some, early 2021, where the number of events at the Civic goes up, that's something you feel like you could, with this change, that could be accommodated, given the workload?
I think right now we're looking at this as a permanent change, and moving some of that workload that was with the administrative assistant off to the director. Also, maybe moving some of that again over to the park administrative staff to make it work for everybody and make sure that fire has the help that they need as well.
And we're maximizing the efforts of all the employees where we can. And I think that's important, whether it's COVID or whether it's the Civic's booming, so.
And so that person, and I guess maybe it was in there that I didn't catch it, but so who does that person report to then?
Civic.
Would report to the Civic Auditorium Director and also to the fire chief, depending on what day their duties were there. It's going to require the Civic Auditorium Director and the fire chief to work together. I don't see any issue with that potentially happening.
No, that's the only thing I would caution you against, Marker, and any time when we're doing this job sharing, because I've seen it happen before in other positions where people have more than one supervisor, and if there isn't clear, consistent communication on a regular basis, that person can become overwhelmed with trying to figure out who they're responsible to first, so to speak.
Yeah, and again, when she's working for fire, she will be scheduled for those days at the fire department. When she's working Civic, she would be specifically at the Civic. So depending on her location and her schedule for that time, that's primarily who that employee would be beholden to.
Okay.
And this will free Andy up to repaint the gray and blue fire station orange and black. So we want to make sure we gave him time. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, both of you. Nick Minnick, professional services contract.
You should have received a professional services contract for USI Consultants. USI Consultants is currently helping us with our Lakeshore Drive project. This is kind of an easy way to get some assistance on our community crossings paving program as well, because the inspector will be kind of out and be in the field. This is a $10,000 contract, and I've worked with the utility departments who have a vested interest in making sure these projects go well too, and they have agreed to contribute to the contract in order to make this happen.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. And Nick, they have an office here locally as well.
Yes. Yep.
They're
right around the corner.
Downtown.
Yep.
Great. Any other discussion?
I only had one question, and maybe I'm not reading it right. This is really a question for probably Nick Otis, but in Appendix D on the first page of that, it says, this agreement, the total fee hourly not to exceed 10,000. Shouldn't it just be the total fee not to exceed 10,000? I mean, if you,
Generally, they'd call out hourly as opposed to a lump sum contract in that case.
So is the total fee 10,000, or are we getting into the hourly rates that are defined on the next pages?
Hourly rates defined on the next pages,
Okay,
up to $10,000.
gotcha.
Comfortable?
With parentheses.
It's kind of tricky, it's tricky wording, right? But yeah.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Pay application number 9, fire station.
The next item I have is pay application number 9 for the fire station project. It's a smaller pay application. We will be paying out retainage and closing out the project probably with the next month. Pay application is for $12,070.93. Larson Danielson has done an excellent job, and I would recommend approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Pay application number 3, 2020, street paving, Walsh and Kelly.
This is for work done through the end of the month of July for our first paving project with Walsh and Kelly. The amount is $93,563.20. I would recommend approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Mr. Kosher has a question, I can tell. Go ahead.
I'm good.
All right. No other discussion. Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Open quotes, Clear Lake Natural Area Restoration.
We received a grant to do some kind of cleanup work where we have a large amount of invasive plants and just generally unsightly vegetation on Clear Lake, kind of at the southwest corner. Sarah Nimitz, our project engineer, put together a quote package. We sent that out to 4 qualified contractors to complete the work, and we should have quotes back from at least some of them.
Do I have a motion?
What?
Oh.
Oh, I was just
Or
gonna
do
say,
we
what
have
are we
to-
approving if, yeah.
Now, is this
Okay.
for the Horizon grant?
Yes, it is.
So I would like to state that Horizon granted us $6,000 towards this, and then they also granted us $10,000 towards Tom Casey's planning department to repaint a little more fun, exciting colors of the crosswalks somewhere downtown. So you'll be hearing about that soon as well. But this is much needed because this is going to be right next to the boardwalk on Clear Lake and will help clean up that non-attractive area. So we want to put a shout out to Horizon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. It is non-attractive.
Okay, the first quote,
And Sarah's holding her breath.
Cardno Incorporated from Walkerton, Indiana, if that's helpful. The quote is in the amount of $3,190. 3190. And that's Cardno Incorporated. Oopsie.
Card with a D.
Cardno, Cardno.
Phonetic.
The second quote is from Heartland Restoration Services Incorporated out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. The quote from Heartland Restoration Services Incorporated is in the amount of $4,323. 4323.
So do I have a motion to accept Cardno?
Are there only 2?
There's 2.
I would suggest before you accept that we review.
Well, can't we put an approval based on review legally?
Pending legal and engineering
Pending
review.
legal and engineering?
Yeah.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So we do have a motion to approve Cardno, pending legal and engineering approval. Any discussion?
I'm just wondering, do those bids include doing both the restoration and then the herbicide application to the purple loosestrife? Both of those?
So there is an alternate on the bid form that we will review and potentially award. Look to them. That's why we wanted to review a little bit more.
So would you rather us not?
If the board would like, we know the grant amount. We've received quotes from 2 qualified contractors. You could potentially authorize the mayor to sign at a later date after review of both quotes. Now that we have publicly opened and read aloud the dollar amounts.
I think so, for
Trust is an
timing.
important part of a relationship.
You got that right.
So,
So do we want to amend the motion to include the mayor to have authorization to sign an additional,
Not to exceed the grant amount?
not to exceed the grant amount of $6,000? Do I have a motion to amend?
Was that my motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course. So we do have that motion. Do we have a second?
am I second? I'm seconding the amendment.
The
Okay, second.
amended motion. So I have a amended motion and a second. Discussion.
This is on the original, the whole motion together, right? Okay. So
Correct.
just, so there's a lot of so herbicides, but is there any other additional work outside of the herbicide piece? I guess that's what I think,
So in our grant application, we looked at some things in addition to just the natural area restoration. We were also hoping to maybe have enough funds to do a small amount of signage to kind of inform people what exactly they're looking at, or benches or kind of amenities like that. So we kept it fairly broad in the grant application, and based on these bids and looking at the alternative for also treating purple loosestrife, we'll kind of look at what other amenities we can add, whether that be a couple benches or some signage or other things of that nature.
okay. All right, yeah.
So we do have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. And again, once again, thanks to Horizon Bank for this opportunity, as well as we will be hearing from the planning department on this as well. So, thank you. Open quote, Clear Lake, change order. Number 1, Stone Lake Trail.
We had a milestone completion date of September 3rd for paving the trail along Stone Lake. I wasn't initially all that pleased with Gary Up's progress, but they've really kind of turned it around and they're doing an excellent job. And there became an issue with coordination and kind of schedule between the city's paving project and the trail project. Initially, the sequence was intended to mill the street and then have the city's street project happen after essentially the trail and median were complete. Sequence-wise, that's not really working out. So I would like to allow them just a little bit more time because of kind of our work on the adjacent road project. And I have September 14th as that additional time necessary to get the intermediate down for pavement on the trail.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Nick, so why, but again, why are we allowing that? I mean, because deadlines are deadlines. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
and we're giving them 11 extra days, is it?
Yes. And what happened was not entirely Gary Up's issue as far as scheduling, just because there's coordination between 2 projects. So I think the coordination between the two projects is kind of hindered their ability to get it done by that date. And it'd be reasonable to extend it to the 14th, but not beyond the 14th.
But was that due to the city being involved, or was that due to Gary up doing two projects?
The city. So two separate projects. We have two contracts for Lakeshore Drive. One is our street portion, which is paid for through community crossings, and the other is the trail project, which is the Healthcare Foundation grant. So those two projects needed to mesh, and we had some issues with getting those to mesh well, and it's not Gary Up's fault. Walsh and Kelly is still within their contract days. It's not their fault. It's just when we get creative with how we fund and how we create infrastructure, there's a little extra coordination that sometimes is unexpected as far as the amount of time it takes.
So, I mean, basically, they have 5 days, right, to complete their portion?
Monday.
And can they get it done in 5 days?
Yes, yeah. It was actually scheduled for last Thursday, but because of this coordination issue, they moved it to this Thursday. With the weather, they have it on the schedule for Friday. And this is just paving the trail portion. So it is ready to be paved right now, as far as everything is graded and ready for the asphalt to go down. So I wouldn't extend it past the 14th, but I do believe they can complete the pavement on the trail portion before the 14th.
And if they don't, what happens?
It's $500 a day.
Awesome.
Right. So I do have a motion and a second. Despite, I don't like extending the days, but in my belief in you, Nick Minnick, on this one, we'll go with it. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Nick. And then last but not least, request to waive permit fees, North Central Community Action Agencies.
We received a request from North Central Community Action Agencies to essentially waive fees. They've worked with Michigan City on a similar thing. This organization builds ramps for elderly, disabled, low-income folks that need ramps on their homes. We've worked with other organizations doing similar ramp projects, and I think it would be reasonable for a nonprofit such as this to not have a building permit fee when they're putting a ramp on a home for someone in need. So they're requesting waiver of those fees, and I would recommend waiver of the fees.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
You mentioned we've done this before for other nonprofits. Do you, any come to mind right offhand? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
Yeah, Rebuilding Together, and then Habitat for Humanity, and we generally have received approval in the past to waive permit fees for, like I said, nonprofits that are doing community building like that, and then also usually government entities such as school corporation or the county where they're building a building in the city. But in this case, this is very typical to waive a fee for a nonprofit doing this type of community service work.
Okay, and they still, of course, though, they meet building permits when they're actually doing the.
Yes, yeah, and that's the key thing is they reached out to us and talked to us about it. So occasionally we have people who are doing great things, but don't do the legwork and reach out and maybe don't even get a building permit. And then it's a lot harder for us to go back and make everything work and make it right. So they reached out, they've been great to work with, and this is I think a great opportunity to serve some members of our community and help an organization do that.
Mayor and board
Maybe we
members?
can, since we have a school board member and a Board of Works member, we can get the school to split the fees now.
What is a
For this?
permit fee? What's a permit fee typically for a ramp?
Generally, these projects would be under the minimum amount, so the minimum permit fee is $25.
I did want to note that
$25 permit fee.
North Central Community Action Agency is also helping pay utilities for customers with delinquent accounts. So,
That's
Oh.
what, they do a great job. That's wonderful, and
So
we
it
gotta
just
help
comes
them.
back to us in a different way.
So we do have a motion to help this fine agency. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Any unfinished or other business you would like to discuss?
I was just going to make one little comment that kind of on the front of the utilities, policy information where the subtitle of providing outstanding water and sewer services to the city of LaPorte. I love the fact that that's just set up that way because I think it underscores a lot of things we talk about with regards to trying to provide the best level of service to our community. And we look at some of the things where we're providing it outside of the city of LaPorte that we really have to take a hard look at how that impacts negatively or positively our ability to provide outstanding water and sewer services. So it's something we talk a lot about. So I like that it's on there, and I think that's
keep
really
that.
kind of our, it's
And
it's
we
the
don't
mission,
want
right?
people
Or-
to take it for granted until
Right.
they have a problem.
Yeah.
It's important. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned.